In this video, I'm going to be talking about how to improve your creativity and problem solving. Hey, it's Tobey here from Training Business Pros. Thanks so much for joining me. By the end of this presentation, you should have a clear understanding of how to solve a problem using 6 very effective but relatively unknown techniques. It's going to be fun. The only thing I ask of you is that you stick around to the end and keep an open mind, because what you're about to hear is powerful and relatively unknown. So let's get started. So before we get into our 6 steps on how to solve problems using our creativity, let me talk about 4 different types of problems, because I think you need to focus on one specific type. The other ones, some are rare, some happen all the time, but there's essentially 4 types of problems. The first one is the simple and obvious problem. This is the type of problem that's already been solved. You've probably solved it before. You face it, you reach into your bag of tricks, and you pull out the solution, and voila, there you have the solution to your problem. So if you've got a clogged sink, you kind of already know how to deal with that. So that's the simple and obvious problem. The second one is what we call the complicated problem. That's one where there's an unknown, something that you don't actually know how to do. And that's where the expert comes in. So essentially, your car's broken, you take it to the garage, and the experts fix it. That's what we call the complicated problem. Then we come to the complex problem, and that's the one that we're really going to be focusing on today in our 6 steps. The complex problem is something that you only know afterward what the steps are in order to solve it. So it's likely something that you haven't faced before, but you absolutely have to take some sort of action, and that's where the 6 steps of action are going to come in. And then finally, we've got the chaotic problem. So the chaotic problem is essentially a crisis level problem. Could be a tsunami, a revolution, the stock market crashes, or even COVID-19. And for that, you're going to have to act quickly. And there's essentially 3 quick steps to deal with the chaotic problem. The first one is just take a moment. And number 2 is breathe during that moment. And then third, figure out what to do next. Use your intuition and be guided by your inner knowing. But again, we're not going to focus on the 3 types of problems that are in there. We're going to focus more on the complex problem. So let's first expand on the complex problem. So part of the human experience is to desire positive, measurable outcomes. So often when we're faced with challenges and problems, we know that we want to solve them and we need a positive outcome. And the positive outcomes are controlled or determined by the spiritual law of intention and desire. And because we're conscious, we can constantly change the arrangement of information and the flow of energy in our lives. And we do this in 2 ways. The first way is we put our attention to it. So this means that we're basically focused on the challenge and the solution. And of course, if you deviate from that and you put your focus on something else because you've got competing intentions, then of course, all of your focus and attention is not on the problem at hand. And the second way that we do this, it's with intention. Whatever we intend to create, which is that positive, measurable outcomes. So whatever we put our attention on will expand and grow and solutions will be found. And whatever we take our attention away from will essentially wither and die. But you need to understand that intention has infinite organizational power. We have the power to essentially organize an infinite number of outcomes. And intent is desire without the attachment to the outcome. So try to remember that. Desire alone is weak. But often when we put desire, we care too much about the outcome. We need something to happen. We absolutely force it. Then you essentially push the solution further away from you. Okay, so now I promised you 6 steps for creative problem solving. And again, I remind you to kind of keep an open mind on this because it's likely not something that you're used to. And all 6 steps are relevant. Let's go to step number 1. Put yourself in the silent space between thoughts. There's a number of ways to do this, but essentially it's a meditative state. Put the mind at ease, at rest, for a moment or two. The longer you can do it, the better it is. I often, when the mind starts to wander and you start playing those mental movies over and over again, step in there and just stop them. And a lot of people cannot do this, so it takes a little bit of practice. But anyway, center yourself in that silent space between thoughts. Number 2, as you come out of that space, out of that gap, which is the silent space between thoughts, you can then introduce the intention. So in other words, if you're constantly just worried and fearful and doubtful about creating a specific outcome and getting through something, then you're not finding the intent within. And putting yourself in that silent space and coming out of it and then starting to focus on the intent. What is the intent? What is the positive outcome that I want to create? And there's a couple of ways you can do this. I like to write it down. It's like, I intend in the next 30 days to get a job. Not because I need one, but because I want one. So just writing it down. You could also use your ESP request box. I've also made some videos about the ESP request box. And for those of you that use it, it is a very powerful tool. Okay, number 3, remain connected to the field of pure potentiality. So this is total Deepak Chopra. It means that you are awake and aware as solutions start to creep into your consciousness, into your environment, situations and circumstances. But often we miss the cues. So you have to be awake and aware, be present. And that's a really important step. Sure, you can introduce the intention all you want, but if you're not awake enough and aware enough to see the potential solutions, then you're missing out on using your creativity to leverage those situations and circumstances and people and whatever comes in, leverage those things for a positive outcome. Number 4, relinquish your attachment to the outcome. I've already mentioned this, but it's super important because the concept of need and expectation that things are going to go bad, worry, fear, doubt, all of that is an attachment to the outcome. In fact, I often tell people, they say, well, I need a job. I say, well, just remove the word need. Say, I desire, I want, I would like to get. The word need means that you're lacking something. Need means there's something missing in your life. And it's a very negative word. So you have to absolutely relinquish your attachment to the outcome. So a quick way, just delete the word need from your language. Number 5, take any action that feels authentic and unforced. Often the actions that I like to take are, I don't particularly know how to solve that particular problem or challenge, but I bet you I can find somebody that has. And so what I often do is I seek out, not necessarily experts, but seek out someone with experience that I can talk to and get some advice. Often paying for that consultation is also effective. But whatever action you take, just make sure that it feels to you like you're using your intuition and your creative magnetic energy and you're doing it authentically and unforced. If you feel like you're being pushed into something or forced into a solution, then that's not the proper way to go about solving this particular problem. And I love number 6. This is the last one that we're going to talk about. So we often spend our time thinking about everything. In other words, going over the details over and over again. But what you can't understand is that the universe in its pure potential state is often seeking solutions on your behalf. So let the universe take care of the details. What does that mean? It means law of flow. Let go. Let it happen. Let things unfold in their own good time. Be awake and aware when the solutions come across your path and take action on those situations. In order to supercharge the law of intention and desire, just be in the present moment. Just be aware that things are happening. And as you're awake and aware, things will come to you and you'll live a much happier, fulfilled, and a life of pure potential. and your creative magnetic energy will attract the life that you want, and your problems will be solved. In fact, the more you do this, the less problems you will be facing, and the more positive outcomes will just happen by themselves.